Podcast 11. Finally, we have spent so much time talking about how natural selection could occur. We've talked about the minute fluctuations in allele frequencies that cause microevolution. Finally, we are going to get to macroevolution, the kind of evolution that we always think about when we think of evolution, how new species actually come to exist. It's one thing to change little allele frequencies in a population, but that doesn't mean you're making a new species. So how does that exactly happen? So that's what this podcast is all about. So speciation. Speciation is the result of macroevolution, new species arising from old species. And we're not just talking small changes over a single generation or so. What we are talking about instead is lots of accumulated changes. So all those little microevolutionary changes that we've talked about, we actually have to add lots and lots of those together to finally get enough change that we actually create a new species different from one that existed before. So there's two main patterns we see in the creation of new species. One is called anagenesis. And in that, one species literally transforms into another. So that's being shown in this first picture here, where we have one species of bird basically over many years transforming into another. This species would cease to exist and be replaced by the new species. So the parent species no longer exists in that scenario. Cladogenesis, is branching evolution. That term relates to the cladogram term that we've been using with our evolutionary trees and so on. So this is the type of evolution in which the parent species, okay, here's our parent, he continues actually to exist. We just branch off a new species in addition to him, okay? So this is the only type of evolution that actually promotes diversity. And when we talk about diversity, we're actually talking about increasing the number of species on the planet. And obviously, this is just replacing one with another, but this actually results in additional species being added, okay? So when we're talking about species, we really need to understand at this point in the conversation what we're talking about. What does that mean when we've got a new species? If we know that these little microevolutionary allele frequency changes don't mean a new species, then what does? There are several definitions of species, but the one that is most often used is the biological species concept, okay, and developed by Ernst Mayr. And what that says is that a species is a population of organisms whose members, and this is the key piece here, can interbreed with each other and not other species, just each other. And when they do so, they produce viable, that means they can live, and not only can they live, but they are also fertile offspring. They can have babies that are fertile as well. So when we look at what we have here, species are hard to define. Look at all these different people. If we just looked at them superficially, we would think many different species perhaps, but in fact, all humans are considered one species, whereas these meadowlarks, the eastern and the western, by the way, this is a great bird, you should look it up, but beautiful song. They look identical. They really look similar, but they have enough behavioral differences and their song differences and so on that they don't interbreed. And so they are considered different species by this concept, okay? So this biological species concept, this particular definition of a species, hinges on organisms only being able to breed within their species and not being able to crossbreed into other species. They are in this sense, reproductively isolated from other species. Reproductive isolation is a huge key. You need to understand that. So this means in order to be separate, distinct species, you must not be able to successfully mate with any other species. Okay? So there must be barriers that exist that prevent you from doing so. You can't mate with others not of your species. Okay? You are isolated reproductively from all other species. Now, what is it that makes a reproductive barrier? Okay? The only thing that is considered a true reproductive barrier is an actual barrier that is an organism within the organism itself, a biological barrier to reproduction. In other words, just because you put two animals on either side of a fence and prevent them from interbreeding, that doesn't count. So we can't just say because we're going to put a fence between you and you can't breed, therefore you're two different species. Okay. So obviously if two species are geographically separated, they can't interbreed, but true reproductive isolation prevents different species from interbreeding, even if their ranges overlap. So we could even put these guys together and they still wouldn't successfully interbreed. There are two types of reproductive barriers that can keep species separate from each other. They are prezygotic barriers and postzygotic barriers. So before the zygote is formed and after the zygote is formed, barriers. So prezygotic prevent a zygote from ever forming in the first place. Postzygotic in these barriers, the zygote may actually form, but the offspring are not going to be viable. They're going to be weak. They are not going to do well. Okay, so let's talk about these barriers. There's a list of several, and so just kind of try to pick out what's different about each. Ecological isolation is one type of barrier. In this type of isolation, species occur in the same region, the same area, but the habitats they occupy are separate. And so they so rarely encounter each other because they are not interested in being where the other one is. There's no interbreeding. So they are reproductively isolated. For example, there's two species of garter snake. Okay, garter snakes are quite similar, but because one lives in the water and one lives on land, they very rarely interact and they don't interbreed. So they are considered distinct species. Tigers and lions could hybridize. We know they can hybridize, but they live in vastly different habitats. And so they don't interbreed. And so they are considered different species. Certain birds are only attracted and survive in the canopy of a forest, whereas others are isolated down in the understory. They certainly aren't very far apart, but because of where they choose to live and the niche they fill, they don't interact. And so that's another example of ecological isolation. Okay. Behavioral isolation. Okay. There are, as we all know already, with bird songs and so on, there are certain behaviors that organisms engage in that let others of their species know they are ready to mate and so on. And if you don't do the right dance, then you're not going to get a partner. So behavioral isolation is talking about those behavioral patterns that are unique and they attract one member of the species to another and allow them to kind of communicate that it's time to breed. And if you don't know the right dance, then you don't get a date. So identifies members of species, attracts mates, courtship rituals, and all that. And maybe we'll look at a few of these in class. Okay? But that also leads to reproductive isolation. If you have the PowerPoint, you can also click on some of those links. Temporal isolation. Temporal refers to time. Okay? And in this type of reproductive isolation, species breed during different times. Maybe it's different times of the day. One's diurnal, one's nocturnal, or different seasons, or even different years. At any rate, if you're not breeding at the same time, your gametes are never going to get together. Okay, so that is another form of reproductive isolation. There are a couple of types of skunk, the eastern and western spotted skunk. They overlap in their ranges. They exist in the same places, but eastern skunks are reproductively active in late winter, and western ones, whoops, my bad, drew my arrow wrong. Western ones are active in late summer, and so they do not interbreed because they're not mating at the same time. Temporal isolation. Mechanical isolation is exactly what it sounds like. You have actual literal physical differences that can't be overcome, and so you can't make a zygote because you can't, the parts don't work, okay? Even in really closely related plants like different orchids, the flowers often have such different, distinct appearances that they attract really different pollinators, and the shapes of the flowers are very different, and so on. For example, if a flower pistil is shaped like this, and we are looking for the ability to cross-pollinate, obviously this guy is designed to fit that flower, this guy is designed to fit that flower and exchange pollen with other flowers like it, and they're not going to be able to cross those flowers, okay? For many insects, the male and female sex organs of even really closely related species just do not fit together, and so sperm transfer is completely denied. And you can see the picture of damselfly reproductive parts here, and if the female doesn't match, they're not going to be able to interact with each other, okay? Okay, gametic isolation. So suppose mechanical isolation is not a problem. We can get the sperm to the egg, but the sperm of one species, even if it interacts an egg, may simply not be able to bind with the egg to fertilize it, okay? There are certain biochemical barriers that the sperm cannot penetrate so that its receptors can lock on to the egg receptors, and then certain chemical changes can happen that allow the egg to undergo fertilization. So again, it's basically a matter of receptors. In some eggs and sperm of the same species, the receptors fit, but in crossbreeding, they do not. And so you may get the sperm to the egg, but they might not be able to interact. All right, now, those were all pre-zygotic barriers, okay? The ones we are about to talk about now are post-zygotic, or as this slide has them, post-reproduction barriers. Now, these, in these cases, the egg gets fertilized, and we may get offspring, okay? But the hybrid offspring that we get from crossing two species, different species, do not develop into fertile adults, okay? So the viability, simply the ability of the animal to live may be compromised. It may live, but it can't reproduce, or it may even reproduce, but the offspring of these offspring don't do very well. So let's talk about each one. Reduced hybrid fertility, okay? So what this means is the hybrids that are made between two different species that actually come together survive very well, but they can't reproduce. They are sterile. And there is one very famous example, and that is the cross between a horse and a donkey, which of course is a mule. Mules are vigorous, they have long lives, but they cannot reproduce. The reason is that the chromosomes of the parents differ in number. So during meiosis, when the hybrids have to create eggs and sperm, and the cells have to divide evenly, it doesn't work right, and they don't get good viable sperm or egg, and so they can't reproduce. Okay. This further explains that horses have 64 chromosomes, 32 pairs. Donkeys have 32 chromosomes. 62 chromosomes, 31 pairs. Mules have 63 chromosomes. It's an odd number and does not work well when meiosis happens. Okay. Yeah, that's illustrating why that doesn't work well. You have that odd chromosome that has no partner to match up with. So when they go to split, there's not the right number of chromosomes. All right, now, next is reduced hybrid viability, meaning the hybrids just don't even live well. Not only can they not reproduce very well, but they don't survive well. So genes of different parent species impair the hybrid's ability to thrive, okay? And what it says here is species of a particular salamander genus may cross and interbreed, but the hybrids just don't develop well, and the ones that do are very frail. Hybrid breakdown means we get fertile and viable first-generation offspring. They do great. They make babies. But their offspring don't do well, or they're sterile and they can't breed. Okay? So I think that's pretty much all you need to know about that. So this is a little chart just reminding you of our pre-zygotic barriers, habitat isolation or ecological isolation, same thing, behavioral, temporal, mechanical, and gametic. All of those are pre-zygotic. We're going to prevent the zygote from being made. Then the post-zygotic barriers are reduced hybrid viability, reduced hybrid fertility, and then hybrid breakdown. Okay? Now, keep in mind that this biological species concept doesn't always work. If you can't watch the organisms behave and see how they reproduce, then this concept isn't going to work very well for you, okay? So you've got to be able to see it produce. So with fossils, for example, fossils can't be classified according to if they reproduce with another species. So we have to rely solely on what the body form is like to deduce if we have a new species or not. So that's one case. Another case in which the biological species concept doesn't work is in asexual life forms where there is no sex at all, like in bacteria. How do you deduce a new species in this biological species framework if there's no sexual reproduction going on? So that's another reason. So life is not easy to categorize. We like to do it. This is a species, but life defies us, and they are hard to define sometimes. But this is one way that works a lot of the time and has been shown to be fairly meaningful when we're trying to determine what is a species and what's not. Okay. A last way that the biological species concept doesn't always work is even in some sexual life forms, because hybridization can occur so well, though it doesn't always. It's really hard to distinguish species sometimes. Coyotes can interbreed with wolves and with dogs, yet we consider all three distinct species, okay? Certain subspecies within a given species may not directly breed with each other, but their genes can get passed around because they breed with other subspecies that do breed with each other. So it's a very muddy place to be when we're talking about species, okay? So we're going to stop this podcast here and pick up with the next one. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next podcast.